Hi everybody, it's 5:24 p.m. in the Eastern United States, Eastern Standard Time. Namaste, I'm Ben Turner with the Order of the Diamond Heart, which is a holy order of Church Universal and Triumphant and the Summit Lighthouse. The Summit Lighthouse is stationed at Royal Teton Retreat in Montana. I am a Chela within the mystery school known as the Summit Lighthouse. It consists of teachings that are part of a dispensation handed down through early theosophists, beginning around the era of Madame Blavatsky, and truly going back into what we refer to as ancient wisdom, and certainly we refer as far back to biblical days, and we consider ourselves to be adherents of the teaching as it is delivered through Mark and Elizabeth Clare Prophet. I have mentioned in other recordings, and I have encountered in the past some confusion with respect to that. I know that certain mystics who study the range of writings on theosophy and Gnostic topics often refer to teachers that might be a little bit out of our realm of interest, and that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine to follow teachings that are similar but not identical to the teachings as they were delivered through Elizabeth Clare Prophet. But because we bear a certain dispensation, because we are adherents of Saint Germain, effectively, and there are Saint Germain adherents that do have beliefs that differ from Church Universal and Triumphant, especially when it comes to the demarcation of the dispensation, how the messengerial mantle has been passed down through the succession of prophets, essentially. We at Church Universal and Triumphant tend to have a codified belief system, and truly I think that the people closest to what we refer to as the white fire core, the people closest to the center of that, try very hard to guard the teachings, to preserve them from degradation by exterior forces, but also to treat them in a sacred manner so that they are galvanized and work for us. This is not different from what the Essene Jews used to do. In the Bible, Jesus was an Essene Jew, and you'll read in the Bible, and you'll read modern-day mystics, great mystics who are not part of necessarily directly connected to Church Universal and Triumphant, such as Atma Jyoti Ashram, which is run by a Swami who is also an abbot, because he's utilizing religious resources from both East and West. You can read information about Jesus as an Essene. When they say in the Bible, and when they say at Light of the Spirit Monastery that the Essenes used to eat the same food in community, they didn't like to eat outside of their community. They're referring to the teaching. They're referring to the sacred information, the ancient wisdom that is protected and guarded by that small group of people. Why do people do this? Why would Jesus and his coterie of spiritual people at the time choose to, quote unquote, eat together, choose to maintain one body of knowledge, as opposed to just accepting anyone's knowledge exterior to their particular sangha? Well, think of it in terms of your own mind and heart, your own set of chakras acting like a computer. When you're inundated with a lot of disparate information, it might be valid spiritual information on some level, but if you're not particular with what you're following, and if you're not particular in the sorts of thought forms that you choose to cultivate, then the sense of community in your among your people in your, is going to deteriorate. And that was one of the very first things that I learned entering the Summit Lighthouse, was that it's not that we're critical of people with differing views, it's that we value sacred information, and it takes a certain level of discernment, and this is a Hindu practice as well. I mention Hinduism a lot in these recordings because it's important that we continue to focus on the influence of Hinduism on Church Universal and Triumphant and this discussion generally. It's important that we maintain our computers, and that's kind of a high-tech way of putting it, but our chakral systems are responding to certain forms of information. So if some people are coming at you and they're telling you certain forms of religious iconography are acceptable, certain forms of, or should be incorporated, certain forms of, I'm not sure, accept this particular theory about Jesus and his travels, and not this theory about Jesus and his travels, even if it contradicts what Guru Ma, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, has said. Well, if you start accepting all of those disparate forms of information, eventually you're not going to be on the same page with the other people in your Sangha. And it's going to diminish the value of the word. And so that's why we say that we support and protect inner temple teachings. There's one teaching. There's one Sanatana Dharma. And by Sanatana Dharma, I really do mean, there's one moral truth that we, I think, as the people here in embodiment, attempt to unravel and understand and to capture, assimilate. But in addition to that one moral truth, there are also certain sets of impressions, memories, recollections, and forms of proceeding with respect to how we talk about certain kinds of religious information that needs to be codified. And it's okay that it reaches a point of codification. Because again, when you have committed to Church Universal and Triumphant, and you've committed to a Chilaship in the attempting to pursue the teachings of one particular guru, at some point you're going to have to cut off other forms of information. And again, it's not that anybody is pressuring you to do anything. It's that you want to have that full body of information as it is shared by people in your community, because that's what makes you stronger. I think that there are some people in the world who don't need require adherence to particular religion, or that they're on their own path to ascension to some extent, and that can be acceptable. But I think that there are people that benefit spiritually on the various planes in this particular octave from focusing on a particular dharma, a codified dharma. And so when I encounter people who say, but Elizabeth Clare Prophet didn't agree with certain of the teachings of Alice Bailey, well, apparently she didn't, and it doesn't mean that you can't carve out a niche as a Chila video that says additional teachings by Elizabeth Clare Prophet. I actually refer to Education in the New Age, which is a book by Alice Bailey. And there are some incredible insights in there that I believe enhance the teaching and I believe are consonant with the true Dharma. However, I've made the deliberate decision as someone in holy orders and someone committed to preserving the teachings of Saint Germain, which have been distributed and protected with a certain level of theological profundity by Elizabeth Clare Prophet. In pursuing those teachings, I have periodically said, well, this appears to be consonant with the Dharma. But I always refer back to that basis, as opposed to some people who are friends of mine who have incredible insight, but aren't necessarily committed to this particular prayer sangha. And if you have your own prayer sangha, more power to you. But that the Essene Jews and then that CUT preserve a specific kind of teaching, and within that teaching there's a delineation of what we do and we don't. For instance, we'll say certain myths about Atlantis have been codified. The chakral colorations. We don't say that it's purple, that the third eye is purple. It's green, it's ruled by Raphael and Mary. We refer to those truths all the time. I suppose you could call those, and that truth is going to differ from a moral truth. But if we view it and we protect it as valued information, then we're being good alchemists. Because we're training our spirit and we're training our chakras to recognize that information and to respond to it. And to respond to it and recognize it in our communications with others within the Sangha. And so it's fine to protect the information. So I wanted to get that point across. I wanted to share this from Mary's Message of Divine Love, which is a excerpt of writings from Elizabeth Clare Prophet. So again, when I'm trying to formulate the Dharma and I look at how it's being presented at tsl.org, I look at the Gnostic writers and the Theosophic writers to whom we give credence. Periodically, as someone in holy orders, I do believe that there's a supplemental dispensation that enables us to reach out and to find material that informs the Dharma as we hold it sacred at the church, within the TSL Prayer Sangha, but you want to be careful because you don't want to be working at odds necessarily with other people. And at some point, it's fine to have your own path and to have a side interest, but to expect that everybody is going to benefit if you go stray too far from the beaten path, it's not necessarily the case alchemically. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's not necessarily the case alchemically that that's going to contribute to our community. It doesn't mean people should be excluded from the community. It just means, why not be on the same page? Why not understand and teach the archangels as we hold them close to our heart, and develop a feeling and develop a thought form that responds to those particular assignments, and forms of codification, as opposed to saying, well, anything goes. We're not on the same page if we're just accepting anything. So I'm saying that this is a specific spiritual practice, and that it's going to help your focus. It'll really help all of the work that you do and your decreeing sessions and so forth, if everybody is aware. Oh, I remember when Mother talked about that as an example. I remember when Mother talked about that in the dictation because I was there, or I heard it recorded on Inner Perspectives, and Mother had said X, Y, and Z about Jesus' reign as High King, about the mystery school that was Eden, about the dedication of that mystery school to Lord Maitreya. Not to, it wasn't dedicated to Lady Master Venus, it was dedicated to Lord Maitreya. That's our quote-unquote belief. And so again, and that's a form of Hindu Dharma. There are three kinds of Dharma in Hinduism, and it's and really in any religion. Dharma as it is written, Dharma as it is heard, and the Dharma as it is remembered. So periodically, this is important to know, because you can read all of whatever spiritual text, whatever part of the Old Testament or the Rig Vedas that you'd like, but you're only going to recall some of it, and there's a reason that you recall some information and not the entirety of information. You recall some of the information and not other forms of the information because the masters are drawing your focus. You're being summoned to learn and absorb certain forms of information. And I've seen interviews, and this is not a popularity contest or a contest judging, evaluating who knows what and whose beliefs are most consonant. It's simply an alchemical truth. And I've seen interviews with TSL Chilas in which people have said, one gentleman said, I've read all of Alice Bailey's books, and another person said, I've never read any of her work. I guess I was never drawn to do so, and that is people will be drawn to study certain parts of the true teaching. So I suppose the codicil, if you will, to that story about Sananda can be that he believed that Sananda was actually the name of one of the Kumaras. We believe in an entity called Sanat Kumara, and Sanat Kumara came from Venus. I believe it was 4.5 million years ago, around that time. And again, 4.5 million years ago, not 17 million years ago, and not 3,000 years ago. In our Sangha, it's 4.5 million years ago. That's how we identify that particular form of information. Well, he thought there's a Kumara named Sanaka. There are 7 holy Kumaras. Sanat Kumara is one of them. Lipo says that Sananda, and Lipo is incredibly keyed in. He believed that Sananda was the name of one of the Kumaras, and he might be right about that. I've read that Shananda was the name of the Kumara. One of us has correct information, and possibly that Kumara chooses to use both names, I suppose, or both names are accurate to an extent or to an acceptable degree. But yeah, right, he didn't. And I mean, when I think about Jesus, it's possible that Jesus was a Kumara, and I respond to that with a fair degree of certainty. Sananda makes more sense to me now, but I've stated before that I don't feel that it's time to reveal my opinion about that name, because I think that there are I think that it's a name of God, and I think that it should be disclosed in a forum that will be appropriately reverential. And I don't really want to make the disclosure over the internet. I'd rather do it when I am properly situated, properly physically situated within, at Royal Teton Retreat or another TSL center. But I use that story to illustrate that the information is valued, it's protected, it's codified, we all relate to it. It's not anyone's information. It's TSL information. Not that other people can't look at the information, use the information, benefit from it. Pearls of wisdom go out to whomever chooses to describe, and they're designed for the general public. And I'm not talking about copyright. I'm not talking about that issue. I'm just saying that within the Sangha, there's right and wrong with respect to morality, and I think that all sorts of paths would relate to how we feel in our heart, and how our beliefs with what should go on in society, and what people should, how the world ought to function, and so forth. But we also believe that there are certain teachings and certain ideas that should be codified, protected, and valued. So that's a little bit different, and very Essene, and not necessarily the same thing as having a very, very broad interest in the world of pagan magic. Not to say that pagan magic can't be, properly qualified. And we believe in the elementals, as well at Church Universal and Triumphant. The four directions and the four elements each have a set of elementals doing the work appropriate to earth, air, water, and fire. Fire elementals are salamanders, water elementals are undines, the earth elementals are gnomes, I'm missing one, air sylphs are the air elementals. So we do believe in elementals. And I think possibly, within quote-unquote pagan practices, there's a manner in which to codify those kinds of teaching. With respect to paganism, and I mentioned this before, I bring it up not to be critical or to drag us into a dark place. And I'm not talking about pagan practice or beliefs being dark. I'm talking about my lack of desire to sully this conversation by saying that there have been all sorts of rifts within the church and problems in the past with respect to that one issue, because I saw it on the website, and the website is generally just fantastic, of course, and particularly the Ascended Master Library, which is really a work of art. I mean, it's incredible resource culturally. Even if you're not a full member of the circle here. Well, at one point, people had TSL people had said, at some university had said, what should we do when people come to us, and this was on the discussion board, what should we do when people come to us and say that they're pagan or say that they're witches? How do we convert them, or how do we not nullify that belief, but how do we explain that who it is that we are and what we're saying? And that's important. And it is important because paganism is different from our form of Christology. And truly, if you want to understand something alchemically, you really do have to understand the Church Universal and Triumphant teaching, because it does value those alchemical truths. Not just I choose to believe this and I choose to believe X, Y, and Z. I like to follow astrology, but I don't like this particular component of New Thought spirituality, so I won't use that. I'm drawn more towards Hindu practice. I'm not talking about personal preferences or even about the teaching as it is codified within TSL. I'm talking about alchemical truths that were taught by Elizabeth Clare Prophet. They're facts of reality that you might be able, either you can interpret them or you not, or you can't. Jesus said, "Let those who have ears hear." and either you understand the alchemical principles or you don't. I'm not saying that the truth about the higher self and the truth about the Sangha and the truth about the real self being the higher mind and also the Christ self is not necessary. I'm not saying that it's not present within paganism. I'm saying that it's not necessarily present. And the only true alchemy has to understand the Christ principle. And I'm not talking about you believe that Jesus died on the cross or not. I'm talking about the Christ principle. I'm talking about Christology. You might call it something else. Some people call the higher self, Buddhists believe the higher self is the Buddhic self, roughly stated. So you have to understand, if you want to embrace the true Dharma in the real alchemy, you have to understand the principle of the higher self. And it's not necessarily taught in paganism, but and to say that Church Universal and Triumphant is entirely different from elemental religions, well, that's not really accurate, because we're not really like the Roman Catholics in that we do believe, we actively teach astrology, we incorporate it into our prayer sessions, and we believe in elementals, and other forms of quote-unquote white magic. And decreeing, which is a form of dynamic prayer, is technically a form of ceremonial magic. But to say that we're pagan, well, to me, paganism operates on a realm entirely apart from mystical Christianity, mystical Buddhism, mystical Islam, and so forth. I do believe that there are pagan elements, but I think that there are plenty of quote-unquote pagans and white witches and so forth in the world today who do adhere to some beliefs to which we adhere, and we share some. There are plenty of pagans who are astrologers, for instance, and where knowledge of the planets is important and so forth. So I wanted to make that additional bit of clarification. I want to read this, Mary's Message of Divine Love. Now, the reason I'm reading this is because I found it. I was drawn to this information and located it on, must have been one of the TSL sites. Possibly it was another site. I'm not quite sure. But it jumped out at me as the time as something that needed to be recorded verbatim. And so I wanted to share this with you and Mother wanted me to share it. When I read it, I knew that she was telling me that it ought to be shared. And here's the passage. It's 2 very short pages long. The coronation of Mary, referred to in the Catholic Church as the crowning of the Blessed Mother with the 12 stars of glory, signifying her majesty of the energies, not majesty, mastery of the energies of the 12 solar hierarchies. Her position as Queen of Angels and Queen of all Saints is understood in the light of the fact that in each dispensation, in each 2,000-year cycle, a masculine and a feminine member of the heavenly hierarchy holds the office of the Christ and of the Divine Mother. Hence, during the Piscean Age, Jesus and Mary have held this position in hierarchy. Their triumph over the last enemy is the open door for sons and daughters of God to walk through and inherit immortal life. I am the open door which no man can shut. Those of you at CUT will know that on the altar of the children of Israel, which is the four mystics, and the tree of life in the middle, our tree of life, in the middle, on the back of the tree of life panel, it says, "I am the open door which no man can shut." So I found that to be very compelling information, and I will be working with that down the line and referring to it frequently, as I will refer to a lot of the material in this book. This book contains information that I feel is consonant with the Dharma, as it is pertinent to the Sangha. I'm going to read it again, just so that we can be clear. The coronation of Mary, referred to in the Catholic Church as the crowning of the Blessed Mother with the 12 stars of glory, signifying her mastery of the energies of the 12 solar hierarchies. Her position as Queen of Angels and Queen of all Saints is understood in the light of the fact that in each dispensation, in each 2,000-year cycle, a masculine and a feminine member of the heavenly hierarchy holds the office of the Christ and of the Divine Mother. Hence, during the Piscean Age, Jesus and Mary have held this position in hierarchy. Their triumph over the last enemy is the open door for sons and daughters of God to walk through and inherit immortal life. I am the open door which no man can shut. Possibly I had to skip forward in how I organize some of this information, but that's the information that I wanted to share. Yeah, the header, and I encourage you to look up the full passage, because Mother was on she was really on she was really keyed in at the time when she was delivering this information. It's Mary's Message of Divine Love, and I believe that you can do a search for it in the Ascended Master Library. Also, for those of you exterior to the church and also within the church, particularly, I think probably more interesting to people within the church, if you go into the site, the new website, everybody should know Ascended Master Library. As someone in Holy Orders, it is my sacred labor to help you understand and to access the publications of Saint Germain. That's one of the goals of people within Order of Saint Joseph. And I will be happy to show you how to go about accessing that information. But if you go on the site, you can also search the pearls now. It's truly an incredible resource. The pearls going back, into the 50s and 60s. And you can search them. So you can search by master, ascended master, nada, or who's on the karmic board, or messages from Beloved Mary, and that sort of thing. It's searchable by topic, and you can do Boolean searches and so forth right on the site now. It's a fantastic resource, and you'll be able to see exactly which pearl to which to refer if you're studying the information and using it and so forth. So I guess that's all for now. I wanted to reach out to everybody, let you know that I'm available now to make MP3 recordings of my particular teaching, and for a limited time at the very least, I'll be able to make them available to you folks for free. I at some point have to find a way to, because I work on this as close to full-time as possible, I have to find a way to make a living handling New Thought information and Guruma information. But anything under 20 minutes I can convert, any of my video recordings I can convert into MP3s, and if you folks want me to attempt to deliver to you some of the material in MP3 format so that you can take it with you, listen to it on your iPod or store it on your computer, that's fine. Just make sure that you credit me and the Sangha so that all of our effort is not for naught. Okay, namaste, thank you everybody, and please feel free to be in touch with me. And also, I encourage people to donate. If you'd like to donate, just simply send an email, and I will send you a PayPal donation form that you can use at your leisure. Thank you very much, and thanks for listening to the teaching today. Bye now.